and welcome to the second Power Your Breakthrough live Q&A. If anyone's new to the project, Power Your Breakthrough is a campaign run by Movidiam, Z by HP, and Intel UK to help young people break into the creative industry. With free classes run by professionals in directing, motion graphics, animation, photography, filmmaking, and illustration. And of course, a competition covering all of those categories with £100,000 in Z by HP and partner prizes up for grabs. This is the second of two Q&A sessions we're running as part of Power Your Breakthrough. And the focus today is on post-production. So I'd like to welcome our creative pros who've been sharing their expertise in the Power Your Breakthrough classes, and today are going to be answering some of your questions. We have filmmaker and entrepreneur Sebastian Thiel and photographer Matthew Joseph. So welcome to both of you. Just one little bit of housekeeping for everyone that's joined us. You'll notice if you wiggle your mouse a little bit that at the bottom of the screen there's a chat option and a Q&A option. If you have questions for Matt or Sebastian during our discussion, just put those in the Q&A box. And of course, you can chat with each other as well in the chat box. So again, thanks guys. I'd like to kick off today just with a 30-second bio, just in case anyone's discovered these presentations for the first time now. Matt, do you want to start and just tell us a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you produce?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Joseph. I'm a photographer, predominantly based in the advertising world. So I call myself a people-focused advertising photographer. And I basically help connect global brands with their local audiences through telling emotional, human-based stories. That's kind of me in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it than that. Things go a lot wider in my passions and what I love to shoot. But predominantly I'm working with ad agencies or direct to brand, trying to help bring their product or their idea or their vision to life through stills and moving image.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Sebastian, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a filmmaker, so, writer, director, and producer. I do a lot of stuff online, but I've also produced like comedy drama for, BBC Three, and I'm currently working on a lot of different projects with various different channels, such as Channel 4. So I really like comedy drama content and making things that are meaningful and have an impact in the world in some sort of way. Yeah.
Fantastic. So there seems to be a theme there already with both of you, and I hear this a lot from creatives, that a key part of what drives you as an artist is the opportunity to be a change maker and to get awareness raised up in the world and to change attitudes. And would you say that that's been a key part of your work, Sebastian, as the projects that you've developed?
Yeah, definitely. I think on the screen, like with talent, it's been about giving people opportunities, people that might not be on the screen a lot. So a lot of black talent in terms of actors, comedians, and so on and so forth. But also within the type of content that I make, I have always tried to implement something that is progressive in some way, even though they're universal stories, and they're still entertaining stories. But for me, I think art is always, it's always better when it says something. It means more and it lasts longer. And I've never been one to just kind of create just for the sake of creating, even though I do think there's that is important as well. But just for me personally, I like to do things that I feel say something. And I've just always been interested in stuff like that. Yeah.
How about for you, Matt? So particularly when you're focusing on personal projects, it's more difficult when it's commercial clients, right? They're telling you what the message is and how it needs to be conveyed. But what is it that catches your attention?
Yeah, you're exactly right. You took the words from my mouth. It's actually, as a commercially focused photographer, it's definitely, you can't always run your own agenda for sure. But so much of my work is outside of that space, which then kind of fuels that work. So personal work, as you said, And for me, it's like listening to the passions and things you pick up on in general life, and like paying attention to them and seeing how you can use your skill, your talent, your network, your platform to make a change, if that's how you feel. And that is something I've kind of always felt. I'm kind of always on the hunt for that, but there's been a few definitely a few kind of causes and charities along the way that I've been involved with so far. The most recent one being an Ethiopian-based project all about trying to eradicate something called podoconiosis, and that was a big portrait project for me, which it snowballed and turned into a big passion project, an exhibition, and something I'm very passionate about talking about. And as much as what I'm trying to work out through my career is, do you as a creative hop onto the next thing and go, I can help them as well, I can help launch that vision? Or do you kind of stick with one and just go, this is me, I attach my name to this and keep on pushing that? That's what I'm trying to work out at the moment, is like, how thin do you spread yourself?
It's hard. Actually, that brings me back to a really key question I want to ask both of you. This is, of course, about breakthroughs. All of the sessions the discussions that we had before, and the power of your breakthrough theme. Let's start with that key question at the very beginning of that journey. And tell me, Sebastian, if you want to go first, what was the big breakthrough for you? I know we discussed this before, but how would you sum up the tipping point that turned you from being someone that was creative to someone that was able to work as a creative? What was that breakthrough for you?
Yeah, so for me, I've always seen it like there's loads of different aspects. So there was times when I first started, and you have that little breakthrough when you first start getting paid for projects. Like first you're working for free, then maybe someone offers you money, and then you're like, wow, I'm getting paid, even though it's small. And then after that, it became a thing of me doing stuff on YouTube and trying to get loads of views, and reaching that height where you break 1 million views on a video or something like that. But then it started, I think my key breakthrough in terms of what we're probably talking about here industry wise was when I made that transition into TV, which was working with BBC Three, and that happened through me kind of taking my own kind of resources to make YouTube content and a show that I could invest in myself. And then that got seen, by Big Talk Productions, and then, by BBC Three, and then it got made as its own separate series with BBC Three, and that kind of transitioned me into that world. So now I'm writing a lot, and I'm doing, maybe like working on 3 different pilots for different shows. And, it took that transition to kind of help the momentum with everything else.
That's fascinating. So in many ways, you created your own breakthrough. You just produced content and you made it compelling enough that it got noticed. And you're continuing to do that with pilots.
Yeah, and I think that's the key for everyone, especially now, like whilst you've got the internet, you can just do what you want to do, and position yourself how you want to be positioned in the world. Or seen as how you want to be seen, you can position that. And then when people buy into you, it's a much better sell, I think, because your people are hiring you because of what you do, not you trying to fit into their box. So I think there's a lot of powerful creatives and artists and stuff at this time if you take reign and just make your own stuff.
That's powerful. And that's kind of, as a director in particular, that's what clients are looking for, isn't it? They want someone that has a recognizable voice. How about for you, Matt? What was the big turning point for you that you started getting paid work?
There's kind of, as Sebastian alluded to, just that moment when you first get paid for something. Actually, it was getting paid to do a shoot from somewhere outside my network, right? Because obviously your friends and family, they're going to be the first on the scene. But when you get asked to do something by some company that just has no connection to you, that meant something. I really remember that quite well. And it was, some, what I would consider now some little job, but it meant.
But how did they find you? So you say it was someone that you
I
didn't
have
know.
no idea. I may have, this is like early days. At some point, I definitely remember advertising must have been one of the last people to say I was advertising in the Yellow Pages, which makes me sound really old, but I think it still exists. It was very early on. I was like, I'll give this a go. I don't know, it might have been from that, but it was just some like random, where I was living at the time, it was some kind of law firm, I think. Anyway, but what I was going to say is that my career, I don't see there's been one huge breakthrough, but it's constantly loads of small breakthroughs. Like, I know for some people they can cite that one time, but for me, it's constantly lots of small breakthroughs. I'm always looking for that next small breakthrough. It's that step up.
Yeah.
I don't want to be shot from here to here because I want to kind of be gaining that experience that puts me in a point of deserving to be there along the way.
You know what I feel like I'm hearing from both of you is that this idea of a breakthrough is actually an internal thing, not an external thing. There's a moment where you decide it's real.
Yeah.
You make it real.
It's like an overnight thing for me personally.
I remember the first ever job I got out of film school where I was paid anything. I did second unit continuity on a feature film. And I cashed the check, I put it in, but I did a color photocopy of it and put it in a frame on my wall.
Oh, that's amazing.
I can get paid. I didn't go to film school for no reason. But both of you kind of came, you led me to another question I wanted to ask you guys. And this is, we have loads of questions actually. Let me just put this to Matt actually, and I'll ask you another question, Sebastian. And we have someone ask this question as well. So the question that's come up in the Q&A is, what do you guys do when you run out of inspiration? Help is the question. And, in particular, of course, right now where we have to drive ourselves so much creatively, what are you doing to stay dynamic and active creatively?
I saw that question and my immediate gut response was go on holiday. Like, I know that sounds like a bit of a kind of flop, but I really mean that. And that can be, it doesn't have to be, Bahamas. It can be just take a break, take the pressure off you. Because I think just talking from my experience, it's when I start to wind down, I've had so many notebook moments, and that is the only time I ever jot anything down with pen and paper, or whether it's notes app on my phone, is when I'm on the plane on the way to having a break. And it's my brain. I've actually read loads into this about the science of what's going on in your brain and how you won't be able to access that creativity while you've got the pressure of life and all those other things, and whether that's kind of current or whatever. As long as that's taking up that time, and like maybe it's different for some people, but for me, and I think a lot of others, it's that creativity is not going to be able to come to the surface. So it's all about making room, I believe, because it's in there. And then if that holiday coincides with traveling, for me, I get inspired just by being in a new place. And that doesn't have to be, oh my goodness, look at that site, or I've just met this person. It can just be something new, a change of scenery, put yourself around new people. For me, like when I travel, I used to travel around the world a lot. It was always light. Like I'd get to a new destination. I remember actually that Ethiopian trip. I remember stepping off the plane as the sun was rising on Addis Ababa, and I was like, oh, that light. And I remember feeling the same in Iceland. The first time I went to New York, like these qualities of light. South Africa at different seasons. Like light inspires me. There's loads of other things along the way, the people you meet, the places you go, but it's having a break and making room. And I think that creates a void. When you give yourself a chance to create a void mentally, it allows stuff to just fall in, and you can kind of churn it out if it's not relevant, but there's some stuff that sticks.
But it sounds like,
sorry, I could talk about that for a minute.
No, it's fascinating. And again, it sounds like, I remember reading years and years ago, I don't yet have kids, but I've watched lots of my friends have kids, and a friend was saying that when a young child is kicking off and having an emotional thing going on, you need to take the child out of that room and put them in a different room, because their brains are all caught up in that environment and their emotional state is associated with that environment. Go to a different space and it's easier for the child to be present and aware and respond to what's happening, instead of just fussing and being carried away. and moving your, and of course we don't really grow up. So moving to a different space helps you to do that, to break the connection with the grind. But
Yes.
Sebastian, tell me about, because you said you've got pilots in the works, and how do you keep going, especially right now? How do you keep driven to keep producing work?
So I've always been like, I know that things are I've always been in this world where things have been uncertain. So it's not so different for me, in terms of mentally and in terms of how the industry works. So for example, when I had one commission with a TV channel, I didn't stop there. I made, sure I had 3 other TV shows that I was working on at the same time. The reason I find that very good as a workflow as well, personally as a writer, is because it means that when I lose inspiration, or when I lose this excitement, or when notes are taking long to get for one script, I can jump to the next one, and I can kind of rotate between these projects. So it's kind of, it feeds into what you're saying, as well as, moving yourself into a different space.
Yeah.
I do that with projects, and that's,
It's a different creative
doing more things actually feeds me. And just to even add to your point about traveling, if you don't have money, the way to do that is through things like meditation. It does the same thing with putting your mind in a different space, or things like that, and opening up yourself for creativity. But yeah, for me, that's how I've been kept. I keep the momentum by working on loads of different things, and that actually keeps me positive as well.
And it sounds like, what both of you are describing, one way or another, sounds like a kind of mindfulness. There's a big drive towards this concept of mindfulness, which at its heart is just being here now, right? Finding a way of really being here now, and not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, not thinking about something that's not in the room right now, but that you're concerned with, but just inhaling and exhaling and being allows you to claim control.
Because this whole thing, as a creative, you want to be happy and make stuff in a happy state, and it's like, usually when you're blocked, it's you're maybe not in a happy state, I guess, like, to a degree. It might be different for different people, but I mean, the more you can kind of free yourself from these things, that's why most of the ideas you get might be when you're on a plane, or playing a sport, or just doing other things. It's because in those states you're not pressuring yourself to, like, I need to think of this. For me, it's never been that effective for creative things, to kind of force
Being
it.
on a plane,
Yeah.
for me, it was just airplane mode on your phone.
Yeah.
Which sadly, actually, that's disappearing now, because Wi-Fi on planes is getting quite good. But it's just the premise of switching off.
Yes. Yeah.
Create the opportunity for a void, and that's easier said than done when you're trying to pay bills, or you've got kids that are screaming and stuff.
Yes.
Right, that's something we've got a question. There's another question I want to get to, but we have a question about that thing of balancing paying the bills. And as I've said so many times, I don't like paying the rent, but I love being able to pay the rent. But we'll come to that in a second. But I have a question for both of you. First of all, talking about creativity and inspiration, what about education? How do you balance the need to continue growing your own skills and knowledge and understanding as independent creatives? Do you have any thoughts or any recommendations on that?
What, how to
continue
learning?
Do you allocate time, on a regular basis?
Yeah, 100%
learning. What's your approach?
So I think, for me personally, I think self-exploration is one of the biggest things as a creative that you can do to help you development-wise, just with everything. So I invest a lot of time in that. But also in terms of the craft, I think it's really important to never stop. You can never stop learning. So I'm constantly, reading other scripts, or reading books to try and improve my craft. And it also helps that whilst I'm doing these things, even if it's for Channel 4 or something, that I'm using these resources and I'm able to apply it when I'm able to apply things. You would think that, if he's got a commission here, he shouldn't, he should be at a level where he shouldn't be looking at books. But for me, I still think it's important. yeah, and you know, even how I started out was through YouTube tutorials, and I learned how to edit through YouTube. I still look at YouTube for different things. So yeah, I'm game
It's a kind of
for
continual
self-development. Yeah, continuing.
process. Yeah, I remember reading
Yeah.
years ago the Royal Ballet School. They would have something like 4 hours training every day, and you think about, you know, if I spent 4 hours every day on a skill, how rock star you would be at that skill. It's
Yeah.
so hard to do. What about for you, Matt? Well, how do you balance education and learning and your own
That's not
growth?
hard to do. Like it isn't hard to do if you're at uni and you've got 3 years of kind of, when a lot of, I have people come and intern with me, and sometimes it's pre-uni and say, should I go to uni? I'm like, well, I think yes is almost always the answer. Not to get the degree, but to give you that space in your life to learn. Like, don't take that for granted. It's the only time in life that you won't have to be responsible for bills and just figuring out life. You're given this platform to be around other people that might inspire you, to learn about other things, to be taught by people that, you know, inspire you as well, and to use the college equipment for free and all that, and just absorb it. And I'm not, I'd like to say I'm kind of more methodical with my continuation in terms of progressing. But the one mantra I tell myself and I tell other people to remind me of, so I don't ever forget, is that I never want to be the guy that talks about the good old days. And that stemmed from, I started my work just after the big recession. So I only ever knew that life. And I kept on coming across or hearing about other photographers who were working in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and they just have this, I mean, some of them have kind of powered through and is doing amazing stuff, but there was a lot left over from that era. I felt that I was kind of walking into this space of, oh, it's not like the good old days. And I never knew that. And they're talking about big budgets, which means a bit more freedom, blah, blah, blah. But my answer to that, and what I want to be to myself, is, well, things are constantly going to change. Instagram has completely changed photography, and it's democratized the whole platform, and you can't sit around moaning about it. So get on board. I'm of an age where I have to think about looking at what the young kids are doing. God, that makes you sound so old. But who's coming up next? Because they're likely bringing with them that next thing that is going to become popular, or it might not be that thing, but it might inspire the technology and the techniques trickle down. So don't ever let me not pay attention to that. And just because I've shot for this and that client and had a good career so far, that, I mean, you're only as strong as your last job. So I think for me, I'm not methodically sitting down one day a week and going, I must learn and read books and watch tutorials. It's more that in the back of my head, just
Stay alive.
Yeah, don't get complacent. Like, you are only relevant, especially in the commercial work, as long as you're doing X, Y, and Z, and there's always going to be people coming behind you. Don't be threatened by that, but use that as inspiration.
So it's funny, you remind me of a Billy Connolly line where he was saying, as you get old, you start picking your teeth after dinner, and he had a deal with his family that if anyone ever saw him do it, they could just take him out and shoot him because it's time.
Yeah, it's along those lines. Yeah.
But this leads on really nicely. Both of you described how important it is to take on board other people's work and see what they're doing, what they're producing, and be inspired by other work in one way or another, whether it's reading books or scripts or looking at other photographic work. And somebody's posted a question in the Q&A here about, and the question for both, if you could just both sum up for me here, how do you work out what kind of work is really for you when you're thinking about projects that obviously you don't always get to choose, but when you are choosing, how do you know if it's for you? Sebastian, you want to go first with that?
Because I kind of have, when you have, it's different. So, like, for example, if it's like commercial stuff or corporate things, I think a lot of those times it's a I don't know, that's a different, it's that question's making me think, because I tend to follow, okay, let me park all the corporate stuff to the side. Let me just talk about me creatively. When it comes to me picking what projects are for me, I literally just go with passion. What am I really interested in? What idea have I come up with that I can't escape? I've got ideas, because you know what it is, when you're working on things, especially in TV and film, you're going to be working on it for years, like writing and developing for years. So you have to be extremely passionate about it, or extremely invested. So for me, I don't know if that answers the question.
But it kind of
So I
does.
don't know if you
The
have a bit of a
emotional,
follow-up that can help.
but it's a kind of emotional reaction, right?
Yeah.
You feel an emotion about a project that's on the table for you, and that's
Yeah.
your guide. What about for you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Sebastian, you did answer it really well. You basically said, am I super passionate about it? Because if I'm not, I don't want to get on board with this, because it's going to last a long time.
Yeah.
It's not as romantic as that for me, I don't think, because TV versus photography, it's a lot. I'm working on a lot shorter time frames and a lot shorter.
Yes. Yeah.
So I am kind of looking at my personal work and starting to see what I'd like to take a bit more long term, and just continue shooting stuff that but sometimes that's based upon, if I look back at that image 2 years later, am I still really proud of it? And there's some work that I've done recently that 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, actually, I'm super proud of that still. That says to me, I need to pursue that more, because also I get good feedback. I work with other people's feedback. I actually, not like, the brutal answer to the question for me is, I have a filter. Like, a job comes in and there's going to be a few different reasons why I take on that job. And I'm a commercial guy, so one of those is money. Are you doing it because it pays the bills? And that might be because you need the money, or it might be because that money can then fund something that you really want to do. Or are you doing it because you really want to work with that client, whether that's for the prestige and helping build your name, or whether it's because you believe in what they do.
Yeah.
Or is it because the idea just sounds amazing and it really wants to make you kind of explore and use your craft to do something cool? I mean, if it answers one of those tick boxes, then like it's great. If it answers two, which is, I'd say, very rare, then it's like no brainer, like amazing. They come along quite rarely. Like the budget is great, and I'm passionate about the brand, about the story. So it's putting it through those filters. There's usually a reason to take on something, and that sometimes that might be very speculative, because I'm not in love with this idea, but it might mean I get to work with that director.
So it sounds like a very pragmatic way of approaching it.
I'm definitely more pragmatic than emotional in general. That's my character.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those things, isn't it? That we have another question here that it relates to really well, and I'd like to hear both of you, your thoughts on this. That, you know, if someone pays you a ton of money to do something, that enables you to do something else, right? So even if you don't really want to do the thing today, tomorrow you're going to do something awesome. So you're always balancing that. But if someone asked in the Q&A here, and this was for Matthew, but I'd like to hear this from both of you. The question is, how do you balance your creative work with the stuff that pays the bills? And in particular, I'd be interested, because, you know, the focus of our discussion is about starting out and breaking through. What about at the beginning of your careers? So when you started out, on the one hand, you're trying to, I don't know if you've seen that infographic where it's about things in your lifetime, like how many days there are in your life, how many months there are in your life. And when you see the infographic and the number of little marks, this is the total number of months you're probably going to have ever. It's a kind of mortal dread, and you realize a project could be 3 of those. And do you want to invest? But when you're starting out, you've got that balance of making a mark and getting paid. So what about, again, let's start with you, Sebastian. How did you strike that balance when you're starting out?
So I've done a couple of things. So one thing that I used to do is, for example, if I was to make money, I'll do loads of corporate projects back in the day. So I'll do a lot of jobs that I may not have liked as much, just for the money, so I can invest it into what I really love. So that's one way I'd done it, and that was really cold. It was really, I don't like this, I'm only doing this to get this, right? And then now that I've progressed, I have a little bit more of the leisure to say what I want to do. And I'm being really strict with that because I want to be happy in this creative journey that I'm on, right? So one thing that like to the point where, for example, I'm more of an author. So like in terms of what I make, I'm very close to it. I write, direct, I produce. I'm very, very close to my project. So I turn down things that people just want me to direct or people just want me to write because it doesn't fit with where I want to go. And I think sometimes you have to be that strict, but if you need to pay the bills, do what you need to do to pay the bills. And one thing, for example, I'll wrap up on this, is like one thing that I do now is I found like a service that I can provide that feeds into my passions, but it is more of a financial thing. So for example, I shoot actor reels, right? And these actor reels, I do them, you know, once a week, and we have loads of actors come down and do, you know, actor reels. So for me, it's really good. I get to work closely with actors. It's a very simple service. It doesn't take up too much of my time, and it's helping the bigger vision, but it's for financial gain. So I think everyone has their own model and their way of working, but the reality is you know, you can't just be how I might sound. I might sound like it's only emotional, but you know, you can't survive if it's only that to pay bills. You know, you're either gonna have to do this and get a 9 to 5 and just be on a creative journey and then make sure you have money to pay your bills, or a bit of both, you know.
But you highlighted a really important tip there, I think, which is that if you are going to choose work that gives you income, you want to ideally choose work that is also connected to the path that you want to take. So working with actors, my own route was, you know, working with post-production because I thought editing was really important, and I started supporting editors. And, you know, working with actors is crucial for all of the other work that you want to do. So it remains connected. You're still doing setups, you're still having that relationship with the camera. How about for you, Matt? What's your tips on that?
I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I think what you just said, Maxime, is, I think yes and no. I've seen, so I actually came into photography from, when I first started getting paid to shoot, I was actually already in another industry. I was in the music industry. So I think I had my creative outlet in that, and that I was, the question is, how do I balance the creative stuff with the commercial stuff? And for me,
particularly towards the beginning of your career.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the beginning. Yeah, and it wasn't even a question. I mean, it sounds bad to say, I wasn't even thinking like creatively. I was like, oh, camera, I can get paid to do that. I can, you know, stepping stones. That's all it was. That gets me to the next place. And I think, but that is because I had the creative outlet in music. So if I didn't have that, it would have been a different story. But I was just going, commercial job, great, leads to the next one. And my personal journey is, I've discovered my creativity after discovering my technicality and experience building up my. It actually was. I mean, yes, I was shooting stuff I was passionate about as a kid. Just, you know, I always had a camera with me, but I didn't come out in that kind of art school in the romantic way of like, I just got this passion I want to fulfill. And I that pays the bills, so that can afford me to do this. It wasn't like that. It was, I'm very commercially driven, and then I've had to kind of backwards discover my creativity and then make room for it. But just to touch on what Sebastian said, I actually, you know, I've done a similar thing in that he found this one thing that could help. It was very purposeful in its purpose. Was, this is purely to fund this, and it's going to be this steady thing. And for me too, is in the corporate world, I realized there was, what I could offer from a creative point of view went a long way in the corporate world, and it was, I enjoyed kind of working in that world because I can communicate with corporate people. So I used that world very specifically to help build my stepping stones to then, which eventually gives you the freedom. So it was very, again, pragmatic, as you said earlier, but I'm nearly done on this point, I promise. It was within that that I would go into I build up a relationship with a client based upon something that's not too exciting. But once that relationship built, there was then much better opportunities that came from within that I would never have known were there. And that was a relationship based thing, because my industry is so much about people and building relationships and knowing how to communicate with people, be it telling a visual story with your camera or just having a meeting in a corridor with someone who's high up enough to actually release enough funds to help you kind of go and do your visual dream project or something. And I did have that with a client who I'm very thankful they kind of enabled my first exhibition.
So again, I think what I'm hearing here is that even when you're first starting out, you need to make sure you've got to cover your bases, right? You've got to eat, you've got to have a roof over your head. You need to find a way to cover those. And also you need to find a way to pursue your career, right? And that means connecting with people and building a reputation. And somewhere in all of that, you've got to have your passion and your drive, because otherwise, what's the point? But this leads to another question. We're almost out of time, but I have one more question from me, and then we've got 3 questions in the Q&A pod I want to put to you guys just quickly. And the first question from me, which I think is so crucial, is, and just quickly now, how do you guys connect with and stay in touch with your peers? And is that something that you seek to do? Is it something that you're invested in, and is that valuable? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really important, especially for me, because there's not that many people that look like me that are in the industry that I can get advice from. So we have to be quite close and communicate with each other regular about, it might even be about hard and open conversations about what people are getting paid and stuff, because sometimes that insight can help like industry standards. I know I've got an agent now, but I mean, early on, like when you're trying to navigate, it's really good if you can try and keep that kind of open communication with some people at least. But I think it's really important on that aspect. Also, I believe that there's space and room for everyone to win. I know a lot of people, especially as a creative, sometimes you can feel isolated, or you can feel like, if I open this up, maybe I lose opportunity and stuff like that. And I don't think that's the way the world is meant to work. Like, and I feel like the more I give and the more I work with people or communicate with people, the more that comes back to me. So I've just found that community aspect of it really useful and important
for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Just one little footnote, because I'm curious, as a filmmaker, so just on a scale from 1 to 10, how impactful and valuable have you found it to be having an agent?
Okay, so I'm very proactive. So a lot of the projects that I've had now have actually been through my communications and things like that. But my agent takes more of a place of like a manager / agent, right? And he, for example, got me my got me representation in LA with WME, who are like the big 4 in like as an agency. It's a massive agency in the world. But so I've found it useful in terms of those kind of connections, management, direction. But I do, and I can't lie, it's much easier having conversations with people when you can send them an email and say, hi, I'm blah, blah, I'm repped by blah, 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 blah. Can you read this? So for a proactive person, it's actually even better. So people listen to you just because you're repped, and
it's kind of a testimonial, isn't it?
And they say they don't take unsolicited scripts, but for example, when I first got Just a Couple, which was my show on BBC 3, I never had an agent. So even though they say they don't take unsolicited scripts, there's ways to get on their radar. So with me saying agents help, I'm saying there's ways.
You still got to do the work, but they are. Yeah, I mean, that thing about unsolicited scripts, I can tell you from soliciting scripts, you just don't want to know, because the awful stuff, you'll get thousands of terrible things. So it's about reducing conversations. How about for you, Matt? How important is the peer thing for you? Do you connect with peers professionally?
Kind of 80% of my career, no, not at all, because I never met any other photographers. Like,
oh wow,
Why would you meet other photographers? You're
Yeah.
the photographer.
Very
Like,
difficult to film, right? Very
Yeah,
difficult.
exactly. And I was working, you're
it's
working
true.
often by yourself. It's the opposite to the film world where you're just
Yeah.
having lunch with a crew of 30.
Yeah.
Now that's changed as I've progressed and I work with bigger crews, and then um, I've then started to make a very conscious effort to, and it's quite a big thing at first because photographers are like their own islands a lot of the time. And what Sebastian touched on there is like that fear of opening up, that you're going to kind of let too much go and let someone else in.
Mm.
But no, I made the decision to open up and to make an effort with other photographers. Easier to do if they're not your direct competition, but they're on like a similar wavelength. Um, and that's really paid off in the last, I'd say, year, 2 years, especially through lockdown. Actually, we've had just before lockdown, I was kind of almost invited into this little WhatsApp group. Oh yeah, you might should come and join us for this, and we just had that coffee in the afternoon, and it's so good to have. And basically, we have all those chats. We talk about money because that is the only gauge you've got is having that open and frank conversations, and it only works if they're really on that kind of a similar stage of progress in their career to you, that you can have conversations. And it's just really encouraging. And then through lockdown, we did some Zoom meetups and just kind of check in. How is everyone doing? What is anyone shooting yet? With the guidelines in place, how are you managing that? And it's just nice. It makes, because you don't have that kind of thing you have in the film industry, it really does help you feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. Which is super important. Wish I'd done it earlier.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's about being understood, isn't it? Feeling like you can, there's an editors meetup that I go to sometimes, run by FMC. It's fantastic, and a lot of us go there just to complain about clients to each other. And you'll be this thing happened, and then the software changed, and and it's. But
you can't do that with people that aren't in your industry. So
right, because they just don't, it's not meaningful. And my occupation's kind of in both worlds. As a filmmaker, I'm connecting people all the time, and in other activities, it's much more siloed. Right. So we're basically out of time, but we have four more questions. I just want to throw at you super fast. Right.
Yeah, sure.
We'll go through these really quick, and then we'll wind up today. It's been fantastic. So I'll just run down these. This is from one of our attendees saying, question for Sebastian. When did you feel like you'd made it as a filmmaker?
I don't feel like I've made it. I don't think there's a making it thing. For me, it's a continuous journey. But I know what you're asking, and I think it's that whole. It's a part of when do you feel like you're part of the industry? Unfortunately, because of how slow things are and my experiences I still don't feel settled in the industry. So that might be why I'm answering in that particular way, but I do understand that I'm much further than a lot of my peers, and a lot further than where I thought I would be in terms of actually getting something made on on a channel like BBC. But yeah, I think it's a continuous journey for.
Okay, but you feel like when you say I am a filmmaker, you really mean it, right? So there is.
Oh yeah. There was a time where you're saying it and you're just trying to, law of attraction and all of that. But now it's like I've got a few credits, so I think there is that initial apprentice kind of stage. Then you've made enough things, but
I remember a true story. When I came out of film school, I signed went onto welfare.
Yeah.
And when you go for the interview, they say, what is your occupation? Because you've got 13 weeks of being on welfare, seeking that occupation before you have to get a different kind of job. And I said, well, I'm a film director. And they said, okay, write film director down. So I had 13 weeks to get work as a film director before I had to look for something else. It was awesome. Okay, next question. What do you think is the most important thing that people should know when they're starting out in film? So this is another question for you, Sebastian. So just a short list.
The most important thing that people should know when starting film.
Yeah.
So I think that it's very different working within the industry and doing independent stuff. So I think that it's important for you to try and get on as many sets as you can. I never had that experience, but just for you to see how they work, so you can take that professionalism and that way of working into your independent projects. I think that's one way. also, I think if you're looking to get into the TV industry, then if you're someone like me, I think learning about the legal aspects about your rights as a writer and things like that, learning about those things are really key, because one thing that can happen is you get excited, you get a deal, you get a show, and then, you know, certain things aren't how you want them to be and you can't go back on it. So I think those are a few key things. Other than that, I would say I'll quickly say that I think that it's all about like doing it. Like, don't waste any time and try and get the best equipment and all of that. Just literally try and do whatever you can to get things made, because it's all about experience. Tie yourself to people more experienced than you, and just go out there and make stuff, because the more stuff you made, the more easy it is for you to have conversations with people like myself about how to do something else, you know? So hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you.
So,
Quick one for Matthew.
all of
What
that
is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, all of what Sebastian just said, apply that to the stills world if there are any photographers watching, because that is all true. Just go out there and do it.
And the legal stuff as well, right? I mean, I feel like everything Sebastian was saying there pretty much applies to stills work as well, right? Getting the legals right and working with other professional photographers to get experience is going to be similar. Yeah. There's a question for you on the list here. So for Matthew, this is from Dan. What is your favorite subject to shoot?
That's tough. I can't just say people. That's a rubbish answer. But it's what's my favorite subject? Authentic, real moments. I'm not talking about. I do a lot of curated, authentic moments in my work for commercial briefs. But no, if I'm with something that's like a real story, real people, there's depth to it. There's something where my photographs are just touching on the surface. Something that I know my images that I take can go on to make some kind of a difference. That is that.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And then we've got a question here. I guess this is for Sebastian, but actually, Matt, I think I'd like to hear from both of you about this. So because it applies to photography as well. The question is, what is the best way in obtaining an agent? What types of work caught their attention? So what do you think about that?
So I think one of the best ways to get an agent is the same way about how to get attention from people in general. If you have stuff and you've made stuff, it's just much easier. Right now, we've got the internet. If you get something, if you make something and it goes viral, it's easy to have conversation. It's easier to have conversations. So I think having a portfolio of work is really great. I think if you're trying, and also, there's loads of different routes where you can do film and go to the film festival and then get agents. I've never been a traditional person, so I've never gone that route. I've gone the route of digital, make them come to me. So if you're like me, do that. Just make some stuff, make it really cool, get their attention, and then they'll come to you. But if you're someone that wants to go the traditional kind of route, I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know how to, you know, email agents and find them. I just know about, you know, just making stuff and getting people's attention.
That's fantastic advice. And Matt, do you have an agent? Have you worked with agents?
I do. There's a lot of parallels between myself and Sebastian in that we're both not from that traditional. I feel like there's, in the photography world, there's probably two types of agent that I see. There's agents that are really looking to rep those who kind of cross the art world into the commercial world, and they're really first and foremost artists, but they can still be commissioned for certain jobs. And it's like, on the surface it looks like super cool. You kind of, it's like the script of Extras. You're chasing that kind of commercial success versus critical acclaim. Like the grass is always greener, right? But then there's another side of agents that they're basically, agents are there to make money from you. That's why an agent exists. You have to realize that it is so my agent is quite a blatantly commercial agent. So I made work that looked like it should be on billboards. So, and I'm not saying because it was amazing work, but like, look what's around you. If you want to shoot what you see up there, there's not much stopping you from going out and making that happen, even if it's like on a shoestring budget. And even if that is just to open the door to enable you to kind of go off on a road trip and just with your film camera and just do your thing, like, it's stepping stones. It just, do yourself a favor and help yourself open some doors by imitating what you know already sells. That's going to affect an agent, because they
produce work that you want to get paid for.
Yeah, in the most brutal sense of it, they have to be able to see you and see opportunity to make money, because otherwise, why are they going to get involved unless they're super passionate about something that you do in your art? That is another side of it. But as Sebastian said, if you're going to go film festival route, that's like amazing. I kind of want to be that kind of guy sometimes, but that's not me. Like, look at what's around you, imitate it. That opens a door to then give you a platform to shoot what you really want to say.
Yeah. And Matthew just said something that I want to quickly add. I'll be really quick. I want to add something to it. He said, what I've found is that being specific is very, works really well as well. Because, for example, to get a commercial agent for commercial work, I actually don't have work that reflects that I can do commercial work, even though I've done TV work, like 30 minutes or 15 minutes. They want to see that I can do 1 minute. Do you get what I mean? It's like they want you to be specific. And also, when I got my agent in from WME, I remember the package that my agent from the UK put together for them was very specific to, he's a director, he does comedy, drama, very specific. Sebastian, my agent, was like, Sebastian, take out your music videos, take out your documentaries, take out, like, he was very, like, I think in America they want you to, and I might be wrong, but from what he said, in America they want you to be in a box in a way, like,
well, I think I think that's great advice, that people want you to be one thing. And I got this advice as well. And if you'll forgive me, I'll wrap up with this, because this is one of the best
it's good.
advice that I heard, which is, imagine if you were hiring a plumber because you've got a fault with a boiler, and there's two plumbers that come, doesn't matter age, gender, ethnicity, whatever. One plumber says, I do every kind of plumbing. I do wastewater, I do radiators, installations, kitchens, and I know how to fix boilers. And the other plumber says, I've spent the last 20 years only ever repairing this make and model of boiler. And I used to work for the company and I just repair these boilers. And the fee is the same. Which one are you going to hire?
We know.
And so it is with, when you come out of education, they say you should have very broad skills because then you're hireable. That's true. But when you present yourself, just pick one and just say, this is what I do.
When you say presenting yourself, because it doesn't mean you can't do all those other things.
In this conversation, this is the thing I do. And that's why it's important to find out what people need before you introduce yourself. Anyway, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
That is about all the time we've got for today. Matthew and Sebastian, thank you very much for your insights. It's been awesome. And now,
thank you very much.
Let's get up. We have our admin here, Jules. If we can get up on screen, we've got, so everyone can get information about the competition. Here we go. This is an absolutely phenomenal competition. So for everyone tuned in, you still have until September the 30th to get your competition entries in. So head over to poweryourbreakthrough.movidiam.com/competition for all the information and for the chance to have your work reviewed by our brilliant panelists here. So take a quick look, check out the website, put in your competition entries, and it just remains to thank you guys. Thank you, Matt and Sebastian. That's been really awesome.
Thank you.
And, thank you for coming along.
Thank you very much. Take care, bro.
All right.